how to set up the learning program / the curriculum manually. For instances, when you're a school that would like to do your own setup and not use what we call presets that we also offer to our CAPS schools, this is how you can do the setup. In case you do not know what presets are, this is where D6 sets up the curriculum according to CAPS on the system for schools, and all they have to do is just select the subjects the learners will be taking in that term, and automatically the tasks and the assessments will be allocated and activated for the learners according to what the department requires. Whereas with the setting up manually, you will be responsible to add the tasks, to add the assessments, and to also activate them on the setup, which is what I will be showing you. This is for different types of curriculum. You can be a CAPS, you can be a Cambridge, you can be an Islamic. It's any type of curriculum as long as you know how the subject has to be set up. So I'm going to be guiding you to do that on the system. However, I will be working on a CAPS curriculum, but I will be doing the setup manually. I have activated the learning program, which is done on my school curriculum learning programs. I will be working with grade 5. You can work with any grade. The setup remains the same. I select grade 5. And there I have activated only 2 terms for this session, term 1 and term 2. And then I can go and set up my subjects on the next button, which is set up learning programs. On set up learning programs, this is where you will select the subject with the tasks and the assessments. Now, in this case, we have to add the tasks and assessments before we activate them. So let's say, for instance, we will be activating English Home Language for our grade 5 learners, and the task that the learners will be taking will be called final exam. And in that final exam, they will have 2 assessments, which will be paper 1 and paper 2. So I will come here and I select my period, select my grade, select my CAPS, and then select the term that I'm working on. Then on that subject is the list of subjects that are available on the database. I select my English Home Language and I drag it to the right. Remember, you can select more subjects. It all depends on the number of subjects that the learners need to take in that department. And if a subject is not there on the list of subjects on the left-hand side, this means you need to send an email to our support department to request them to add that subject on the database in order for you to activate it for that term. So because the subject is there is no need for D6 to add it on the system. I select it and I drag it to the right-hand side, and then I click on Submit. Please note, if you select something on the left-hand side and drag it to the right-hand side without clicking on Submit or Save, the system will not save it. So it is important that when you drag it to the right-hand side, you remember to also click on the Submit button. And then you will have a green tick on the bottom right to show that the changes have been saved. Then you can continue on to the next step, which is where you set up your subject. On this step, this is where you will do the split allocation for the subject. If the learners will be doing SBA assessments only in that subject, then this means you'll have to allocate your weight under the SBA. If they will be doing a split between SBA and exam, you will also have to do that split on SBA and exam. It all depends on what the school prefers. So in this case, this is a grade 5 setup, and the subjects will all be SBA for term 1. All the assessments will be SBA. So I will go on to that row, and then I will click on it. Then I can go and allocate my weight to be 100% SBA. I do not have to allocate any weight under the practical exam or the ANA because all the assessments that the learners will be taking in this term will not be counting towards them. But if there is, it's important that you also allocate the weight on them. In some cases, you find that it's 75% SBA and 25% exam in the term. So what you will have to do is put in a 75 and put in a 25 under exam. You also have the circled threshold. This is where you will put in the mark where the system will circle the failed marks. So it's where it actually stops with the failing marks. Let's say the subject pass mark is 50%. The circle threshold will be 49.5. So the system will circle all the values from 49 below to show that this learner has failed this subject, and it's highlighted with a red circle. So that is where you put in the value and you'll say 49.5 if the pass mark of the subject is 50. You will select the staff member on the drop down and then you will save. So if there is no subject head, you will click on none so that you are able to save your changes by clicking on the accept changes. You can also change the alias names. What the alias names are is the names that will print on the report cards. They are the names that will print on the report cards. If you don't want it to say Engels Hairstyle in the Afrikaans version, you are welcome to edit it here and then accept changes. Then it will save. It's very important to update this information because if you've not updated it, also the assessments will not calculate correctly as it needs to know what the split is between the SBA and the exam. Now we go on to the next step. You will select your subject. This is where you go and choose the tasks. You will have your list of the tasks there. But in a normal case where it's a new school that is not even using CAPS, you will not have the tasks on the left-hand side. Or even if you have tasks and you are looking for a specific task and it's not there, you can add it. So this is what I'm going to show you how to add the task. But if it's added onto the database, it will be listed on the left-hand side. You just simply select it and drag it to the right-hand side. But because we want to add one called final exam and it's not listed there, how do we go about? We go and add it on the database. So I click on back and then I go to learning outcomes tasks. I select CAPS or the type of curriculum that you are using. Then I select my grade. And then I select my subject. To add my task, I click on Add New. I make sure I'm still on the correct grade, my subject, and then the name of the task in Afrikaans, final exam. And I'm also going to name it in both fields since this is an English school. But if your school is English and Afrikaans, it's advisable that you capture the Afrikaans words in the Afrikaans fields and the English words in the English words so that when you generate your reports, it also generates correctly. The code in Afrikaans, I'm just going to call it FE. It can be numbers, it can be alphabets, it can be combination. And is it a common task? Will it be taken by other schools as well? Yes or no? Is it a DOE task? What the DOE task is the Department of Education. Is it offered by the department? Yes or no? And this also gives it the option to be exported to SASEMS. So if you say it is not a DOE task, this means when you export your information to SASEMS, the task will not be exported. So it's very important to note that when you add the tasks. Highlight if it's going to be exported or not. And the ordering, must it be the first one, the second one, the third one, the 10th one? So you put in the number and then you submit. If you want your tasks to be sorted alphabetically, then you need to use the same number on the ordering for all of them. The system will automatically sort them alphabetically. So now I have saved my changes. I'm just going to close my tab and check if my task has been added on the list of tasks. So there it is, there at the very bottom. There's my final exam with the codes in Afrikaans and English and the task type, which we did not select, but if you want to link it to a task type, you can. And then the preset, that is when you are using presets, it will indicate for which term it falls under. Remember, I did say presets is a setup by the department. So we do the update on the system. And if you are not on presets, there is no need for you to update the preset. And then the common test is also indicated. Remember, when we captured the information, we did select that it's going to be a common test and it's also going to be a DOE task. And now it is active on the database and the ordering is number 10. The usage is when it was used. It has not been used yet. This is why the column is blank. If we go and activate it on the setup learning program, the date will be 2022/1. So it gives you the year and the term that it has been activated. So I have added my tasks, and if I still want to edit it, I can just come back to it, click on it, edit what I need to, and then accept my changes. I have added my task. Now I'm going to go and add the assessments because already if you add a task, we know that the assessments also need to be added as they will be counting towards the task. So we add it on assessments and then you select your grade, you select your subject, you select your task, which is final exam. You see it's blank because we did not add anything and the system does not automatically activate the assessments. You click on add new and then you make sure you've selected your grade and then you select your subject and then final exam. You make sure the assessment type is correct and then it's going to be counting towards SBA, but if it was exam, you will select exam. The name of the assessment is going to be paper 1. Remember, it's the name in Afrikaans and English. The keyword in Afrikaans, you can use numbers 001. You can use alphabets, you can use both. Is it a DOE assessment? Yes or no? And then how much is it going to be out of? It's going to be out of 50. And the weight, how much is it going to count towards the task level? Meaning how much is it going to count towards the final exam? So it's going to be 50, but you can allocate the weight that you prefer. The ordering, it's the number that is going to appear on the report cards. So it's going to be number 1 if you are printing your task marks. And then the DOE ordering is for the Department of Education schedules. Which one must it be? The first, second, or third? Same thing applies. The difference between the two is that the ordering for the first one is for report cards and the next ordering is for the schedules. So I'm going to put in number 1 and then submit. I'm also going to be adding another one. I'm going to go back first to check if the one was added successfully, which is done. So now I'm going to add new. Then grade 5, final exam, also SBA, and this one is going to be paper 2. And then I'm going to put in the keyword 002. And then is it a DOE assessment, yes or no? And out of how much? 50. How much is it going to count towards the task level, which is the final exam? 50. and the ordering is going to be number 2, and also on the schedules it's going to be number 2. I go and select submit. Now I have successfully added my 2 assessments that will be counting towards my task level final exam, and then it will be counting towards my English home language mark. So it's very important that even when you add them, you allocate the correct out of marks, the correct weightings. So both of these, paper 1 and paper 2, will be counting as SBA, and you'll be counting 50-50 towards the final exam mark. And because they are not yet used, the column is blank. Now I can go back and continue with my setup learning program, which is under the curriculum setup, and you select setup learning program. I check my grade, I check my term, and I make sure that I'm on the right subject and on the right tab, because remember, we've activated the subject English home language, and then we also did the setup to allocate the split on that subject, where we indicated that this is SBA 100% and also allocated the circled threshold, which is 49.5. And then step 3, that is where we were supposed to choose the tasks, and the tasks are not available. So we had to add them on the database, which we just did now on the databases under the learning outcomes / tasks, and also added the assessments under that task that we added called final exam. So we added the 2 assessments called paper 1 and paper 2. So English home language, I added final exam, and I'm looking for it on the list of tasks. I select it and I drag it to the right-hand side. Remember, if it's not there on the left, it's not active on the database, you add it. Then I go submit. Then once it has been submitted and it's success, there's our green tick. We can continue on the setup learning outcome / tasks and see if the information is correct. And if we need to change it, we can by clicking on the name of that task. Then it opens the fields for you to edit. So it's English home language, and then the final exam. And then the alias names, like I said with the subjects, they are the names that will be printing on the report cards. And if you want to change it, feel free to just update it there. Maybe you don't want it to say final exam, you want it to say FE, or you want it to say F exam, or you want it to just say exam now. You can edit it there. And then the date is the task dates. It must be within the term that is active on. And the task out of, if you want your task to also be out of a certain mark, you can allocate it there. And then the weight for the component is how much it will be counting towards the subject. So it's going to count all of it 100% towards the subject. But we can change it and say the final exam will actually be out of 100 as well. So both the assessments that are under that final exam, the paper 1 and paper 2, will then be converted to a mark out of 100 for the final exam. So you can save your changes there. Just going to update the date as well. The date must be within the term. I'm just updating the out of mark. Then we can go on to the next step. Choose assessments. We have successfully activated the tasks and also updated the out of mark. So now we are on step 5. That is where you choose the subject, the task, and you activate the assessments that count under that task. And we added paper 1 and paper 2, which will also be active in the term. We select them and you drag them to the right. Remember, when you add assessments or you add tasks on the database, they are not term specific. You add them, they will just be on the database. You have the option to choose for which term to be active. So you can add all your assessments for the year, all your tasks for the year, and activate them according to which term they should be. There it is, and then submit. Paper 1 and paper 2 has been activated. Another important thing to note is the word in bracket is SBA to show that the assessment type is SBA. And it must be like that because we have indicated that in step 2 that English will only have SBA types. There is no weight in the others. So even the assessments must indicate that they will be SBA. Then on the last step, you check the assessment and the allocation. You select step 6, that is the setup assessment. And then is English home language. It's the final exam. And then you check your assessments. It's paper 1 and paper 2. Also, the alias names are available. You can choose to edit if you want by clicking on them. Or not, you can reject your changes. The mark out of 50/50, that's how we updated it on the database when we were adding it. And the date must be the date within the term. The weight for the assessment, how much is it going to be counting towards the task level? It's 50/50. And the percentage weight applied is the weights converted to work out of percentages. So if you have different weight allocations, it's going to work it to convert it to weight out of 100 to make it easier to understand and to convert to the task level. So whatever the learner gets in this paper 1 out of 50 will be counting 50 towards the final exam. And the same thing applies 50 towards the final exam. So these percentages will come in handy when you are working it out. The weights are very, very important because they have an effect with the marks calculation. When you work out the results, you don't just simply add everything together and divide them by their number. So it's important to take note of the weights and to work it out proportionally according to the weight allocated. You can also export the information to Excel. On any screen on the system, if you see the button Excel, this means the information that is displayed there can be exported to Excel. Not all users will see that button because this is a profile issue. If you need to use the function, you need it set up on your profile for you to be able to export the information. Please note any information that has been exported to Excel from D6, D6 will not be held responsible for any changes that is made there. But yes, you can export the information to Excel. Just to recap, we did the setup learning program to show you how to activate subjects manually where you do your own setup. You go and activate the subject, you activate the task, you activate the assessments as well. I also showed you how to add them on the database, which is on the My School curriculum databases. We first started with choosing the subjects that the learners will be taking. And obviously, in a normal term, the learners will be taking a lot of subjects. And I cannot do all those subjects because the idea here is to get you to see the setup and to understand how it is done. So when you do the rest of the subjects, it will remain the same concept. So you choose your subject and then you set up your subject where we did the split for the SBA practicals and exams. And we also indicated the circled threshold. And if the subject has a subject head, you also update it there. Then we did the step 3 where we choose the tasks that the learners will be taking in that same subject, English home language, term 1. Then we activated them, final exam. And this final exam was not listed as part of the tasks. We had to add it on the databases. In a normal case, this would be blank if you are not a CAPS school. So you have to add all the tasks for your subjects. To activate, we dragged it to the right-hand side. And then Step 4, that is where we did the setup of that task, but this information is updated already when you add the task on the database, but you are still welcome to make changes to that information by just clicking on it and changing what you need. Remember the alias names? The alias names are on the report cards. So if you change it, it's what it will print on the report card. Then we went on to choose the assessments that will be counting towards those tasks, which was paper 1 and paper 2. We made sure it has been activated. It's on the right-hand side. It's the subject. It's the task. And then the assessments activated on the right-hand side, which also indicates the type of assessments in the brackets, which is SBA. And it's also important to note that the assessment type is correct and updated, because if it is not, the workout of the results is also going to be affected. You cannot have an assessment added as a SBA, whereas the subject has been set up as exams. When the exams will be counted, that one will be excluded because it's not going to be counting towards the exam. Then lastly, we did the setup assessments. That's where you preview the details and you can also edit if you require, and you check the mark out of the weight for the assessments, and then you just make sure everything is in order, but you can change it as well. So in simple terms, the assessment level will be counting towards the task levels, and the task levels will be counting towards the subjects. So the weights are important, the out of marks are important, the number of tasks, the number of assessments are also important. Just make sure you update the information correctly.